morning, everyone. So Campbell's asked me to do a short presentation today just on tendering process. Some of you might be familiar with tenders and some of you might not. So my job today really is to create a possibility for you around something that you may not have considered before. So before we start, I guess one of the questions I'd like to ask you is, are you playing to win in your business or are you playing not to lose? Because they're very different strategies. And I sit across the table from my, sorry, I don't know why I'm all nervous all of a sudden, but I sit across the table from my partner, Nick, and I listen to him sometimes have business meetings with lots of different small business owners. And you can hear a lot of the time in those conversations, they're playing not to lose. They're not taking the risks that they need to take. They're not innovating in their businesses like they could. And they're playing small, they're playing safe. So I want you to think about, as we go through this presentation, how did you play 2025? What's in store for you? What has the potential to be in store for you in 2026? And what kind of mindset changes might you need to make to start thinking from the place of playing to win as opposed to playing not to lose? Is that fair?
Yes.
All right, so most of you will be familiar with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. And he talks about, he divides the quadrant up. On the left side, you have employee, self-employed. And generally in that quadrant, or in those two quadrants, you are trading time for money. So when you're not there in your business isn't functioning. It's not working for you. On the right side of the quadrant is business owner and investor. So these are where you're leveraging time, you're leveraging other people's expertise, other people's energy, other people's money to make you money. And of course, investor is the passive income side. So when we think about tenders, this is an opportunity for you to go from the self-employed quadrant over to the business owner quadrant. Now, some of you in this room are going to be, you know what? I like being self-employed, I'm not looking for more. And that's okay, because I want you to remind me at the end of this presentation how you can still maximize or tap into the tendering process from a very different space, all right? So if I forget to talk about that, please remind me. But for those of you who are interested to see, how do I go from self-employed to business owner? How do I go from leveraging my time, my energy, my money into leveraging other people's? All right. So you'll see some spelling mistakes and changes is always one I make here, but if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? So we go back to that mindset of how do you need to start to shift your thinking? What are some of the calculated risks, measured risks that you could take in your business to move you from that self-employed quadrant over to the business owner? So one of the things I want you to think about is the tendering process, all right? So anyone here had a look at tenders before? Just a quick show of hands. Yep. And keep your hands up if you thought, oh my God, this is way too hard. Yeah. If you link up with me, I'll send you a presentation that my business partner Rob and I did on the common myths around tendering. And it's all too hard is one of the biggest ones, right? So did you know that 85% of the tendering process can be done in advance? That's your systems, your processes, your policies. All of that can be set up in advance to make the tendering process a lot easier. Yeah? So in November, the Queensland government committed $32 billion, folks. $32 billion. Let that sink in to small business. They've reduced the amount of red tape it requires to apply for a tender. I think the document originally was something like 700 pages and they've reduced it down to 50.
Wow.
Yeah? They've named specific target groups that they will be looking at to give some of this money to. My question is your hand up to collect some of that money? So here are some of the target groups. If you're a female-led business, you're in that target group. Why? Because traditionally female-led businesses are granted something like 3% of funding that's available. So that's part of the target group. If you're a First Nations business, that's part of the target group. If you're a veteran providing services to other veterans, that's a target group. If you're a business that's providing services to the disabled, that's another target group. But that doesn't mean if you're not in that target group, you don't get a piece of the pie. So keep listening, because the opportunity is now. You heard Megan come up here a couple of months ago talking about the runway to the Olympics. There's 7 years between now and the Olympics. That means there's 7 years for you to build credibility, provide evidence, and show and demonstrate to the government that you are a low-risk supplier. So by the time the Olympics come round, and all of the opportunities around that, and they're already recruiting for suppliers now, you've already got demonstrated evidence that you can do this. Are you going to miss out on that? As small business owners, that you get regulation thrown at you, you get rules changed, you get all sorts of things happening. And this is a way to secure your income. This is a way to get sustainable, predictable revenue. And often, let's say you get a 3 or 5 year contract, you have the opportunity to get an additional 2 years or 3 years or whatever once that contract finishes. The big thing I want you to understand here is that you need to be visible and you need to be low risk, high value for the government. These are not buzzwords. These are words you want ingrained into every part of your business to make it so that you're a viable option for them. So, what could you bid for? I know there are people in this room that could do mowing, slashing, brush cutting. I know people in this room that do pest control, uniform supply, people who could do marketing campaigns, who could provide event staffing, temporary staff. So you think about the Olympics, they're going to need a whole bunch of recruitment agencies who specialize in temping staff. Printing services, the Queensland TAFE just had a printing tender out, and they were looking for suppliers to do all of their printing. Courier services, equipment supply, mental health solutions. So recently the Queensland government had a mental health solution provider tender. That's a really clunky way of saying it, but basically they were looking for veterans who could provide mental health solutions for other veterans. And I just happened to have a client in the marketing space who fit that bill, and he put in for the tender. He's received word that he wasn't successful, but that's because there are some invisible elements of the tendering process that most people don't know about. So there's wonderful AI solutions coming for tender. There's people who can write those tenders for you, but there's a secret sauce about tendering that those two elements cannot do for you. And when you work with us, we actually take you through those elements so that you're in a much better position to get those tenders. But do you see some possibilities here for yourself potentially?
Everybody.
Yeah. So who are we? Tender Coach. So Rob Machin is my business partner. He's the ex-CEO of the Royal North Shore Sydney Hospital. He was CEO there for over 20 years. He's been on both sides of the fence of the tendering process. So within the Department of Health for New South Wales, he actually put supplier lists together, or required specifications documents together to say what he was looking for as a buyer. And he's also been on the other side where he's putting in tender applications. He actually was successful in winning Australia's largest financial services tender worth $7 billion, and he won that twice. When they went for it the third time, they didn't get him, and they didn't get it. For myself, if you like titles, I call myself a performance ecosystem strategist, and basically what that means is I'm great at systems. I'll get in the trenches with you in your business, look at those policies, procedures, those processes, look at the entire ecosystem of your business. So not just you, not just your staff, but also your suppliers and how that interconnection happens so that there's this smooth, seamless transition between them and that everybody knows what's on board. Just think about this, and most people don't. If you apply for a tender, let's say that you're in the printing business. So we look at someone like AJ. Think about the ecosystem of his business. He's buying paper, he's buying ink, but he also needs couriers who will do the delivery. So when you elevate your business, it's like the rising tide lifts all ships. And there are all these other businesses that you do business with that get to benefit from the steps that you've taken. Yeah? So that's something that businesses don't often think about. And the other thing that I'm seeing the government is really pushing is the space of innovation. And this is where Rob and I excel. Like, we're both out of the box thinkers. We are, you know, really excited and passionate about ideas and things that you could do to leverage in a really practical way to build that ecosystem for your business. So I was doing some research recently, and the Queensland government put out a tender for uniforms, and I just happened to read some of the information, and they wanted an innovative way to upcycle, recycle, or repurpose uniforms. And so that sent me on a bit of a mission, and I did some research, and I found a business in Logan who does exactly that. They're a multi-award winner, and it just blew my mind that they were right here in Queensland. You know, so that's the kind of ecosystem that I'm talking about. So at Tender Coach, what I want you to know why we're different is that we build competency, not dependency. So I talked about the AI solution for tenders, and I talked about people who write tenders for you. Both of those build dependency. Because if you don't have those, you don't understand the underlying principles that are required, plus neither of those touch on those secret sauce that I mentioned earlier, right? So we're all about building competency and capability inside of your business so that your 85% is already done. And then when you come to the table and you find a tender, it's just that last little bit that needs doing. Most of these models out there are also a hope and pray model. You pay a chunk of money and you hope and pray you get something back. We've developed a couple of different models, one of which is a subscription model where you come in, you do it yourself, you get the tools and the resources, and you've got a runway. So that runway could be 6 months, depending on your timeline, it could be 12 months, where you can just chip away and get each element of your business in order, so that, let's say by the end of that 12-month project, your 85% is done, right? And so then you've got some one-on-one coaching that can happen, etc. So that's what we're about. So I want you to think about whether or not you, let's say you decide you're going to go through this process and you submit a tender and you're not successful. Do you think this is a win-lose situation, or a lose-lose situation, or a win-win situation? What do you think it is? Win-win? Why do you think that?
Because that's the way the world should be. It should be a win-win. If you're going to be doing business, all parties should be winning.
Okay. Glenn?
You could give them the door to start with, so they've got you on record that you actually made the attempt and you go in again.
Yep.
I've done quite a few tenders and
Yep.
it works.
Yep.
I think what you're trying to get at is that doing this process shows you where your gaps are in your business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
Yep. And you have a better operational business by the end of this, just simply having this in place, and it will reveal also the opportunities. You know, where are you playing to lose as opposed to playing to win, and where can we start to pull those levers to get you where you need to be? So absolutely, regardless of what happens. And when you apply for tenders anyway, most people don't ask for feedback. That's gold. That's gold in terms of information that you're not capitalizing on. So something to think about. All right, so are you going to play to win in 2026? And what would that look like for you? We're coming up to the Christmas period. Most people, you know, are needing some much needed downtime, but maybe as you've had that and you've got some time to reflect, you might think about how might you do business different in 2026 to give yourself a bit more of an edge. All right, so just quickly, again, in terms of our approach, we have 3 opportunities for you to engage with us. The first is a free community. We're building a free community that gives you access to education tools, that kind of thing. If you're not quite sure where you are and where you want to be, that just gives you a bit of food for thought, if you like. Rob and I had started at the end of this year doing some webinars, so you'll have access to that as well. As I said, we have a do-it-yourself subscription model. It's relatively low cost. It takes you through the tender process step by step, but it's all you. And if you want to, you can then use the opportunity to get some coaching. And we have a consulting model. So the consulting model is we're in the trench with you. We may write some things with you. It's more of a high cost model, obviously, because that's more of our time. And what tends to happen is people come to us at the last minute. And so, of course, you know, with 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever, 4 weeks to go before a tender, there's quite a bit of work to do often. So this is obviously not an option that most people would take on, and we work towards those deliverables. So finally, here's a potential next step for you, is just simply to join our community, start getting those educations. I'll start talking to you about what's available, and just be in the loop, essentially. Before I leave today, I did want to just talk about a couple of tenders that are available right now that are applicable to some of you in this room. And that is sort of, so let me rattle some of these off. I'm not sure if I'm going to get the pronunciation of this correctly, but Cootamundra, Gundagai, yeah? So they currently have a number of different tenders open right now for legal services, audit and risk committee, and debt recovery, just as an example. So one tender is looking for marketing, is looking for all sorts of things. So sometimes you have to go into them to see that. The City of Moreton Bay is looking for mechanical and electrical services. They've got a tender open for that. University of Queensland has a landscape and maintenance tender open. Across Australia right now, there are 415 local government tenders available. Some of those I've just mentioned are where you need to be physically present, but here are some where you don't need to be. Insurance broking services for Queensland government, they're looking to put together a panel. Rolling Stock is looking for an advertising revenue generation supplier, and East Gippsland is looking for marketing, business admin, environmental management advisory. So a whole bunch of things there. So if you're curious to see what kind of tenders might be available in your particular industry, you can jump onto Vendor Portal, create an account, it is free, and you can scour and have a look at what's available there. Thank you for your time.